In this video, we're going to talk about 8 different ways to make money as a developer. And for each of them, I want to talk about what programming skills you need to get started, as well as how much you can hope to earn. These money-making methods get progressively more harder, but also more rewarding because once you create, for example, a digital product, you have the ability to earn income which is not tied to your time. Imagine, for example, selling an app while you sleep. That's just one example. Towards the end, I'm going to show you a bunch more, so stay tuned for that. Hello, my name is Alex and I'm the host of the Scrimba Podcast. I've gone in depth with 6-figure freelancers like Tom Hurst and Gary Simon. More recently, I spoke with Florin Pop, who managed to earn $20,000 in 1 month without a boss or freelance clients. Florin is also the author of 10+ ways to make money as a developer, a fantastic book which I will reference throughout and link in the description alongside my interview with Florin where we spoke about some of the specific details. In this video, I want to show you the money makers that can actually work and then point you in the direction of more in-depth resources. But beware, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme by any stretch of the imagination. The only way to make money as a developer is to bring value to people. Maybe you save them time, maybe you solve a problem that they can't. No matter what you do, if you're helping them achieve their goals, there's money to be made. This could be on a service basis as an employee, or it could be building a product or something like that. In truth, the quickest way to get started making money as a developer is probably to get a full-time job, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, there are so many reasons to get a full-time job as a new programmer. You can get a good salary and a lot of stability. In some countries, that might mean health insurance, which is obviously very important, but you also get career progression, mentors, and an ability to work with a team. These are things which, if you can get at the beginning, will be invaluable later. And you might need less skill than you think to get your first full-time job because there are trainee programs, internship programs. In my opinion, every junior developer job should imply that you get some training and career progression. And even within that, not every junior dev job is created equal. It's probably a lot harder to get a junior developer job at a huge American San Francisco based company. But if you look in your local area, you might find an opportunity just for you. What I would say about working a full-time job is that you can get a very decent salary, and in the first few years it will rapidly grow. You'll get bonuses and raises very quickly, and eventually once you get to a more senior position, you can start to negotiate things like your base compensation as well as bonuses and stock options and things like that. Just beware of huge numbers being thrown around as they usually originate from San Francisco, which is kind of its own beast due to the living costs and the nature of the companies, but you can absolutely earn a great living. You might just find though that there is a bit of a ceiling. Freelancing is a great step and a great way to make money if you're looking for a bit more freedom. You also have a bit less of a limit on your income because whilst at a job you kind of have to wait for an annual raise and might be at the whim of your boss or your manager, when you're a freelancer you can just start to charge more or start to work with different clients. You probably don't need as much technical skill as you think you need either. Because as a new programmer, you tend to start looking up to more experienced programmers and that becomes your new base level and you think, oh my god, I've got so far to go, I'm such a noob. But what you tend to forget is that the mass majority of people don't have a clue about configuring software, let alone coding it, which means you can go to local businesses, mom and pop stores and things like that and build their websites. On websites like Upwork, which are freelance talent pools, there are often people who have used configuration software like Wix or WordPress who need to change something that the plugin just can't do. So they need you to come in, read the code and make the change. And honestly, it's not always as daunting as it might seem. It could be just a few lines of CSS and a great way to get started. That being said, you will need some practical or soft skills because now you're the person who's having to go out and find clients, work with them, expand their business and all that good stuff. Freelancing can be incredibly lucrative depending on how you price your projects. At the beginning, don't expect to make a ton of money, but later in your career, you can start to charge based on the value that you bring the customer. For example, if the code you wrote, if the feature you added enables a business to earn $1 million a year, you can then negotiate a payment based on the value that you brought. Without you, they wouldn't have earned that $1 million. That could be reflected in your compensation. This is different from cost-based pricing, where you kind of just look at how much it cost you to build it, like how many hours did I spend doing it. So there we go. Those are 2 ways to make money as an employee. Freelance is a bit blurry, but you do still have a boss and your income is largely tied to the amount of time you spend doing the job. Let's look at being a creator, where you have the potential to create so much more leverage. By creator, I mean some kind of content creator. We'll look at blogging in a second, for example. But first, let me summarize some of the benefits, because these benefits apply to all of the ways of making money as a creator we're about to talk about. Principally, you are essentially self-employed. And for what it's worth, a lot of these things, which I'll talk about next, you can do on the side, which means you can combine them to create an interesting life and business, or you can do them alongside a job to earn even more money. Technical writing is an incredibly lucrative way to make money as a developer. This could mean starting your own blog, which in itself becomes an asset, and in the meantime you can run ads and affiliate links, accept sponsored posts and things like that. But something I think is very overlooked and quite dear to me is technical writing for companies. Many companies which sell products that developers use, like Twilio for example, will pay writers to create technical tutorials that will rank on Google when people search a related query, and likewise enable them to be more present in developer communities and things like that. I've run content programs like this in the past, and it's not easy to find good technical writers, and you can expect to earn between $300 and $500 per post. If you have your own blog running ads and things like that, it's really hard to say. The amount can vary a lot, from a few bucks a month when you're starting out to thousands of dollars a month once you have an established brand, especially in a niche. I wouldn't really recommend starting a YouTube channel as an alternative to a full-time job, but I just want to point out that it's something you can do on the side that might evolve into potentially something insane. I was really inspired by this guy called Ali Abdaal, whose YouTube channel turned into a full-fledged business, making, I think, $1 million a year. Through YouTube, you primarily earn money through the ad revenue, but also like blogging through sponsored links, affiliates, and things like that. If you are then sort of trying to sell a course, something I'll talk about in a second, that kind of audience would be primed for that because they like video content and you've kind of earned good faith in the way that you teach and they enjoy the way you teach. You could consider starting a Patreon or something like that, and you don't need to be an amazing programmer to do it. You can be teaching the person who's just a few steps behind you. In fact, the thing about technology that's so wonderful is there are always new technologies coming out, and even a developer of 10 years can't have seen something that only came out yesterday. You as a novice programmer can read the documentation, try and make sense of it, and then turn that into a YouTube video that in the early days will ride the wave of excitement, but say that technology, this new API or whatever becomes popular, you're going to be the first video, and hopefully one of the best, which means in 12 months, a year, 2 years, however long it might be, your video could be the go-to one, earning a steady little bit of revenue via YouTube ads. And as Florian experienced, sometimes your video gets picked up by the YouTube algorithm and it sort of perpetuates it in a way that makes you money while you sleep. Creating courses is big business, and I learned from Florian that him and Brad Traversy have this Udemy course that in August made the amount of money you see on screen right now. Here's the breakdown of that $20,000, by the way. I'm sure you've been curious. I think you need quite high skill to be a good course instructor, and you also need to have really in-depth knowledge because you have to make sure that what you're teaching is pretty legit. I think with a free YouTube video or a blog post, you can get away with it. It's not the worst thing in the world. People will correct you. You won't make the same mistake twice. But if you're asking for money for your course, you have to be really confident about what you're offering, and that takes quite a high degree of programming skill and ability to present and teach. Now, I've never experienced this, but what I'm talking about is one-on-one mentoring. I'm inspired by my friend and someone I've had on the podcast named Dylan Israel. He often does this and seems to have a huge impact on people's lives. It's just to say that if you are a full-time employee or you've been doing it for a while, even if you're a new developer, if you have any unique experience to offer, you can be a huge help to people. Imagine you've been grinding to get your first developer job for a year. You will have learned a lot and could perhaps offer one-on-one mentorship. If you are a serious, experienced person, you could obviously offer mentorship, and you can charge anywhere from $30 to frankly $500 per hour. And so the skill needed might vary. I would say intermediate to advanced. When I say creating digital products, I'm talking about plugins like on Envato, components, libraries, kits. People create themes for non-technologists and, think about Ghost or WordPress or something like that, and they make significant revenue doing it. There's a guy named Olia who used to sell Tumblr themes and made an absolute killing in the process. There's still lots of opportunities as new CMSs arise, as well as new trends and things like that. Plus, you can always improve on what you see already. Another great idea is templates or potentially ebooks. I had Swizek Teller on the podcast recently, and he really showed me that you can make an ebook about anything. It doesn't have to be a 500-page book. It could be something much shorter. Finally, you could consider creating a web app or a mobile app that you sell, for example, on the App Store. This is harder and harder every year as the market becomes more saturated, but it is true that if you create a sticky product that people always install on their new iPhone install and keep coming back to use, you can make a fair bit of money. I think you need a medium skill. It is difficult to say what skill and profit you can hope to make. I would definitely say at least intermediate when it comes to skill, because you really have to do right by your customers, otherwise you have no chance in the long run. And one reason why WordPress has got such a bad reputation for security is that novice programmers would create plugins for WordPress that then people who don't know anything about code would install, but they would introduce, for example, security vulnerabilities in the process. In a front-end template, it could be responsiveness issues or something like that. And so honestly, I think you need to be an intermediate, but my goodness, the profit is potentially unlimited. The last thing I want to talk about is creating a software as a service product, which might sound very similar to selling an app or a website, but software as a service is a business model where users have to pay monthly in order to access the app at all. Think about Netflix as the prime example, but I'm sure you can imagine other kind of software like Grammarly that you use, but also developer APIs, like people pay for Stripe, they pay for Auth0, they pay for Twilio, that kind of thing. If you can make a SaaS product, you're in a very good place. What tends to happen is once someone subscribes, as you might have to Netflix or Spotify, they tend to keep subscribing, and that can be a huge source of long-term income. And whilst you will incur some kind of cost around support requests, and you'll need to keep adding features, otherwise your customers might become dissatisfied, it effectively can turn into something which is quite passive and easy to maintain. So I just wanted to float that as one incredibly exciting idea that could make you a good amount of money, fund a lifestyle, and who knows, might grow its own legs and turn into a really successful business. I'd love that. So there we have it. Those are 8 ways you can make money as a developer. Heavily inspired by Florian Popp, generally an inspiring guy, always sharing what he's working on in public. You'll see that a lot of these topics relate to chapters in his book, which you can find in the description. If you don't want to buy it, then you can listen to our podcast episode. It's absolutely fantastic. I loved speaking with Florian. Once again, I'm Alex from Scrimba, host of the Scrimba Podcast. Please do check it out if you haven't already. Subscribe to the podcast and here on YouTube, where we're always, myself and Team Scrimba, making videos for new developers, people learning to code, and obviously becoming a junior developer. Thank you so much.